The New York State Department of Transportation presents the DOT POD.
And welcome into the DOT-POD. I'm Josh Heller.
And I'm Anya Cardos.
And we are delighted to have you joining us. Well, you might notice, but we have hit the road once again on a special road trip to one of New York's most beloved annual traditions. Not the good New York State Fair, no. The great New York State Fair. And the New York State Department of Transportation has a long partnership with the fair, which I know many of you have heard recently with our previous podcast that was right here prior to the fair starting. But it includes traffic management, ensuring the fair runs smoothly each season, and today we're recording this episode inside the Science and Industry Building, where NYSDOT has many exciting exhibits which are fun for the entire family.
Oh yeah, there's lots of kids in here today, lots of people asking questions about what NYSDOT does. While we're here, fairgoers have the opportunity to learn more about the crucial role that DOT plays, making sure that kids' school buses, motor carriers, vehicles used for transporting patients to doctors' offices, and many other vehicles are safe and reliable. And we have two guests today who know all about that. That would be Marc Berger. He is director of NYSDOT's Passenger Carrier Safety Bureau, and Jeff Corey, Field Operations Manager. Jeff and Marc, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us. Good to be here, guys.
Outstanding. Well, I guess we'll just start out kind of at the beginning. Marc, we'll start with you. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your position, and how you ended up here.
Sure. Well, let's see. At the end of the month, I'll be with DOT for 23 years.
Oh,
Congratulations.
Thank you. Started off as a motor carrier investigator down in the New York City area, and sort of worked my way up through the ranks down there, and made my way up to the Passenger Carrier Safety Bureau about 7 or 8 years ago, roughly, and became the director about 5 years ago. And here I am today, via car.
And Jeff, how about you?
Okay, I started with DOT about 24 years ago. I started down in the lower part, Region 2, down in Sullivan County. I worked my way up through supervisor for Region 2 out of Utica, and then I came to the main office about 6-7 years ago and took over as Field Operations Manager.
Well, let's get started talking maybe about the past. So we'll go back in time a little bit. When did these kind of inspections begin in New York State, and kind of maybe go into how they've evolved?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's probably going to surprise you, but these inspections go back a lot further than you might imagine. They go back well over 100 years.
Wow.
School buses have been inspected in New York since the early 1900s. In fact, the motor vehicle inspector position is probably one of the earliest civil service titles in existence in
No
New York
kidding.
State.
Was it even DOT at that time?
No, it was not. It was, for a while, it was the Public Service Commission, and prior to that, it was even a different agency.
And that's when you started back in the 1900s? Is that
Oh,
what you're
yes,
saying?
absolutely, yeah. You can tell by all the grays in my hair. Absolutely. So it goes back a long time, and obviously it's evolved greatly, throughout the years. And I would say that it's evolved into probably the most stringent, rigorous inspection program in the United States. And I could say that with all humility.
So what goes into it, right? What are things that you're looking for? And we should preface this by saying, if we were to look to our right, your left, there is a school bus right here in the Science and Technology Building, a smaller school bus,
yes,
so that you can actually have inspections, show people what these inspections are like. And especially with school right around the corner for everybody, really, this is something that's extremely important to all New Yorkers, to parents, So what is it, I guess, how does it start out? What are you guys looking for? Take us kind of through what these inspections are like.
Sure. I'm going to let Jeff go into that detail, but I'm just going to let me give you a brief overview of the program first before we go into that. So we inspect all vehicles under DOT jurisdiction get inspected twice a year, semi-annual basis. And you're talking roughly, probably about 120,000 inspections per year. So there's about 60,000 some odd vehicles that we inspect over the course of every year. And I would say about 70% of those are school buses, school vehicles. The rest are comprised of different vehicles which we have jurisdiction over. We regulate the ambulette industry, so that's vehicles that do non-emergency transportation of people to doctors' offices and other sorts of medical appointments. We also inspect charter buses. So the big motor coaches you see out on the road, that do charter trips, that companies that do line runs throughout the state, bus lines. So all sorts of vehicles fall under our jurisdiction. So we have about 110 inspectors located statewide, with 11 or 12 field supervisors that have that sort of keep watch over those guys out in the field. And then we have our main office staff of there's about 5 of us in the main office, program management and program analysts and techs, that, basically help take care of all the guys out there in the field.
So with 60,000, you said 60,000
Yes.
inspections per year?
60,000 vehicles. So that's
60,000
about
vehicles per
120,000
year.
inspections
Wow.
per year.
So and you're saying that this program is extremely rigorous. That's got to really be time consuming. You've got the people to do it, but what do you look for when you're inspecting all of these vehicles? Jeff, can you talk about that?
Sure. Basically, we start with the driver's records, daily reports that drivers fill out to make sure the bus is in safe working order. So we go through the paperwork, we go through the preventive maintenance files. That shows any services that have been done since the last time we reviewed the vehicle 6 months prior. And then we actually start looking at the vehicle. Basically, we're going bumper to bumper. We check over 400 items during the inspection process. And it takes about 60 minutes to 90 minutes, depending on the size of the vehicle. So it's a rigorous inspection.
Do you actually drive the vehicle? Some of them, do you take them around the corner to see how they're working? How in depth does this get as far as actually getting behind the wheel as well?
Okay, so after we do the physical inspection of the vehicle, we have a mechanic. We go out on a road test. We use a Vericom brake meter, and during that brake test, we actually check the efficiency of the brakes to make sure they meet federal standards. And also, we're checking for noises, rattles, improper running engines, transmissions not operating, things of that sort.
You're here at the fair doing this, and actually physically doing this on this bus. I mean, it's I don't know if it's a real bus.
It's real.
It's okay. It's a real
No,
bus.
it's as real as it gets.
So, why is it important to show what's going on, especially for all these families that are walking in, who in the next week or two are going to be, putting their kids, their little ones on buses every single day? How important is it for them, walking through here to see the type of care and the type of effort that goes into this, that they probably don't know much about?
No, I would hazard to say they know very little about it, and I think that's why it's very important for us to be here. I think, obviously children are our most precious commodity, and these buses are transporting everyone's most precious commodity. So I think, the fact that we do such rigorous inspections, I think it's important for the public to know that, because I think the public is probably, they don't know enough about what we do. I've spoken to just people in my own private life about, what I do, and they're pretty amazed by it. They had no idea. And honestly, a lot of them feel a lot better putting their kids on school buses after I tell them, a lot about what we do and how much care goes into every inspection to ensure that, these vehicles are as safe as they can be.
When you talk to parents, as you said, people ask you questions in your personal life, but here I would imagine there are some questions as well. What are some of the questions that parents ask you? Because they're curious, I'm sure.
Yes, some of the bigger questions were about seatbelts, if they're mandatory to be in the school buses. In New York State, we do mandate all school buses have seatbelts. It was a big difference of the parents seeing a bus that they rode 40 years ago compared to the buses that we have now.
I didn't have any seatbelts in my bus.
So
for sure.
Yes, we now have high back seats. Everything is compartments. So it's a much different, safer bus from 40 years ago.
Yeah.
So
It's probably the safest type of vehicle on the road. Most people probably wouldn't even know that.
That's what I've heard as a parent.
Yeah.
People always tell me that. I don't know, Josh, if you've heard that too with your son, but everybody always says this is the safest ride to school. And,
Absolutely.
and that makes me feel good as a parent, for sure. I would imagine you're hearing a lot of that here.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Everyone, I think, has been pretty amazed by, what it is that we do and how much we do to ensure that these vehicles are safe. So I think some of them walked away definitely feeling a lot better about putting their kids on one of these in a couple of weeks.
Especially up here in the Northeast, I mean, obviously it's important that school buses are safe throughout the country.
Sure.
But around here, that school season goes through snow and ice season, and, it's just the way it's going to be. And yeah, there are, delays, and there are there are snow days, but most days, even if the roads are a little snowy, are a little icy, these buses are still going to be out there. How do you make sure that not only are they safe just, on a normal day, like it would be, in a couple weeks when they start school, but also in January and February when the weather is going to be who knows what, and throughout the entire state. I mean, out in Buffalo, is going to get just hammered.
Oh, yeah.
How do you make sure that they're going to be as safe on those days as they are on the dry, sunny days?
One of the things, our inspections go out throughout the year. So if we do the bus today, it expires 6 months from now. So a lot of times we're in these garages, different operators, so we're kind of seeing what's going on with the operation. So, and we rely a lot on the drivers as far as pre-trips and post-trips. The buses should be checked every morning and every night, and there's a process to write up any defects to ensure that the bus is safe.
If you don't mind, I want to ask some questions going away from school buses, maybe talking about like motor carriers and
Sure.
other vehicles that you guys inspect. Talk about those and what makes them special, and what kind of specific attention do you give those, especially motor carriers? We see those a lot going up and down our highways, especially the Northway in the Albany area. What about those?
Sure. So, in addition to our program, the semi-annual inspection program, we do have a roadside inspection program as well within our Motor Carrier Compliance Bureau. And those are the guys that you see if you're driving along the Northway or any of our major arterial highways. You'll see the guys in blue jumpsuits on the side of the road there, and that's where the signs that are on the road that say, trucks must pull in here. So they're doing a little bit of a different type of inspection. They're doing a commercial vehicle roadside inspection, and those inspections are usually focused on the trucks that are out on the road, tractor trailers, the straight trucks, and they're doing a safety inspection of those vehicles. They're checking paperwork. They're checking driver credential, licensing. They're checking medical certification of drivers, make sure that they're medically qualified to be out on the road, in addition to what they check on the vehicle.
What about, let's go into, what if something doesn't go the way that it should for the operator, and maybe they need to be pulled out of service?
Sure.
What is that process like?
So in our program, if the bus receives what's called an A defect, which is a critical safety defect, the vehicle is placed out of service. And a very large intrusive sticker is placed on the windshield of that vehicle to make it very clear to them that the vehicle has been placed out of service. They get handed an inspection report that indicates that the vehicle has been placed out of service as well. Depending on the criticality of the defect, some defects are so critical that they cannot even operate that vehicle until that defect is corrected. So they'd be required to have that vehicle either fixed on site or have it towed to a repair facility in order to get fixed. And then obviously we would need to re-inspect that bus before it would be allowed into service.
Now, I do think there is a distinction to be made as far as these inspections are concerned, the roadside inspection versus, the semi-annual inspection. That one's
Sure.
not happening, on the roads. That's happening at a garage, someplace that, that's it's scheduled to, why is it important to have both of those things? The regular, every 6 months we're checking this out, but also hey, you're on the road. We want to make sure you should be on the road. You're allowed to be on the road. And so how important is it to have kind of both of those working in tandem?
Well, I think it's very important because, our program, the semi-annual inspection program, is just focusing basically on passenger carrying vehicles, where the roadside program focuses on all types of vehicles. So they're getting the trucks that we don't get in our program. And those inspections on the roadside are completely random, whereas ours are scheduled. So that's the random element factor where, any vehicle has an equal opportunity of being inspected at any time. So that program definitely gets a sort of a broader spectrum view of the world out there because they're getting trucks coming in from all over the country. So obviously, we want to make sure that vehicles that are domiciled here in New York are safe, but we also want to make sure that vehicles coming in from other states are safe as well, because we don't want those, we don't want vehicles that are poorly maintained or drivers that are not qualified to be operating on New York State roads.
I'm curious, do those operators who are from outside of New York State, do they say, hey, this is a little more rigorous than what I'm used to? Do you ever hear that?
Well, no, because the roadside inspection program is actually a uniform inspection program done throughout the United States. So the same roadside inspection you get here in New York, you theoretically should be getting in Kansas and California. So it's the same for those guys all over the place. So so we usually don't hear that, but where we do hear that comment is with our bus inspection, our semi-annual inspection program, is that, there's even a joke in the industry that, when a new bus comes in, it's got to be New York certified. In other words, it's that bus has to jump through a lot of hoops in order to even pass our inspection, whereas in another state they could probably get by with a lot less.
A little badge of pride there, I'm sure,
absolutely.
for you guys.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about electric vehicles. That's something that has been going on for a while, but with larger vehicles, some school districts, what are we looking at right now when it comes to EVs, and how is that going to change what you guys do?
Well, we're starting to see many electric vehicles coming into play as the buses here at the State Fair is fully electric. And right now in New York State, we have about 100 electric vehicles, school buses in service. The inspection procedure as far as safety-wise is the same inspection, except you don't have the exhaust and some of the fluid leaks, oils, things of that sort.
One of the complications that does come with EVs, and we've seen this with vehicles, is just the weight.
Yeah.
The weight of that battery, especially for something that, like a bus. I mean, that has to add a ton to the weight, which has to put a lot more strain on the braking. Are those complications that are going to need to be addressed as these become more and more prevalent on the road?
Yeah, you'll see the axle weights are heavier in the electric vehicles, and the gross vehicle weight ratings are also higher based on the battery packs.
So you were talking about out of service vehicles. What are the out of service rates now, and what are we looking at across the state?
We're doing pretty well. So just to give you an idea, about 30 years ago, the out of service rate statewide was over 25%, which is 1 in 4 buses were not safe enough to be on the road, which is not a good number to have. And I think we just we really had an impact on the industry over the last 30 years with new regulations, new safety policies and protocols in place that made our inspection program even more rigorous. And now, for the last several years, our out-of-service rate has hovered around 4%. So that's pretty amazing, considering the amount of vehicles that we inspect to have, only about 4% of those vehicles to be what we consider high out-of-service.
You talk about what it was, 30 years ago. Was there a catalyst for that change? Was it just simply realizing how high that number was, or was something, was there a driving force behind, changing things to make sure that 25% was not going to be the norm?
Well, I think we do a lot of public outreach with the Head Mechanics Association, trying to get knowledge out to the people that actually work on these buses, and we really stress that. Marc does several outreaches a year to get to some of these organizations, and I think it's just a partnership with everyone.
Right, you're looking at this as reaching out, making sure that everybody understands what the rules are and working together. Is that what you're basically saying?
Yes.
How did this just start in the past? You said in the past 20 years or so, this kind of evolved, right? This relationship?
In my duration at DOT, I think we really started reaching out more and trying to really push the safety as partners.
Yeah.
And that's the way I try to look at it with the garages. We're part of the system as partners to make sure the buses are safe.
Do you feel that this has prevented potential accidents? Do you feel that this could have, had this not changed, this could have been?
I really feel that way.
Yeah.
And I try again to stress to the operators that we're a partner. We're not always a bad guy coming in to beat you on the head.
Right.
There's good things that come out of it for everyone.
Right.
Well, I think when it comes to kids and children's safety, I think everyone realizes we're all pulling in the same direction.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We're all
Yes.
looking at the
Exactly.
safety of the
Yes.
kids.
And That's why we advocate the notion of just partners in safety. It's like
Sure.
we're just not here to just, like Jeff said, beat you over the head. Ultimately, you should want the same thing we want.
Sure.
You
Right.
should want safe vehicles. You should want to be in compliance, and we're here just to ensure that. And if you're not, it's not our fault. It's you're the one that needs to
Right.
do a better job in keeping your vehicles maintained properly.
Now, when you have such high standards, talk to me a little bit about training, because training has to be, I mean, you can't just walk off the street and, inspect. I mean, I see the bus right to my right. I have no experience. I couldn't walk over there and, know what I'm doing in the slightest. So talk about the training that goes into, to the inspectors to make sure that they are able to keep those high standards.
So basically, upon hiring an inspector, we do check their qualifications. They have to have a mechanical background. So we try to build on the mechanical background, and then we start in the field showing the regulations and going over the strict criteria that's involved in it. And we build on that.
Yeah, basically, inspector just doesn't, get hired and thrown to the wolves. Inspector is working with either a supervisor or a senior inspector for a good amount of time. Just basically, in the beginning, sort of shadowing, and then, it's a lot of on-the-job work. It's not sort of a classroom training type thing. It's definitely more of an on-the-job type of a training. Obviously, there are regulations they need to become proficient in. There are policies and procedures that they need to become proficient in that happens over time. But a lot of it is a lot of visual, just going around and observing, and then having a senior inspector or supervisor then in turn observe them as they start to do inspections. So it's definitely a good amount of time before an inspector is just out there on their own after getting hired.
And Jeff, you mentioned that, you believe that you've made a difference. I have no doubt about that. You guys have to take pride in what you do and the difference that you make. Again, we're talking about the safety of children. It's a noble cause, to be perfectly honest with you. You have to take pride in that.
Yeah, we do. I think that goes for all of our staff. I mean, we have an extremely dedicated bunch of folks working for us that take their jobs really seriously, take the impact of what they do every day very seriously. In fact, we've actually had guys quit because they felt it was too much pressure for them. Just the notion of what they're doing every day and worrying about, did they miss something? Is something that they miss going to cause an accident? They just, they feel that pressure, because they want to succeed and do well. So, it's definitely, I guess it's not for everyone in a sense. You definitely have to have sort of that intestinal fortitude to be sure of yourself and what you're doing and making sure that, that you're doing your job properly.
You also have to care.
Yeah. Yes,
you have to care. It's not
absolutely.
it's not just a job that you're working, 9 to 5.
I don't think
out.
I don't think you could do this job properly if you didn't care.
Right. You've got to, if something's wrong, it's just got to gnaw at you. That's the kind
absolutely.
of person you're looking for.
Yes,
right?
absolutely. A true safety professional.
Right. During many of our episodes, we ask our guests to share a few things with us at the very end of each episode, and it's 2 questions. One is, what's your favorite road trip, New York State road trip? And what's your favorite road trip and song?
I'm sorry, what was the second part? The road trip where?
Road trip and song. What are you jamming to? Yeah, what are you jamming to in the car?
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Road tripping song. Okay, let's see. My favorite New York State road trip. That would probably be to Niagara Falls, from where I live down on Long Island. So that's a nice long that's a nice long road trip. And that's seeing most of New York State. So yeah, getting up to Niagara Falls. My wife and I did a trip years ago. We did a nice road trip up to Niagara Falls, which was a lot of fun, and just obviously the falls are beautiful. So being up there was great.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Road trip and music.
Road trip and music.
I
mean, we're usually rocking out with 90s alternative. That's sort of our.
Love it.
Okay, you got a fan sitting right across from you.
I was going to say, that's what we listen to on our way here.
Yeah.
That's kind of our favorite for sure.
Outstanding. Jeff, how about you?
Basically, our best trip is up to Clayton on the St. Lawrence. We love the area.
Nice.
We watch the ships come down the river, and it's just a relaxing time. We try to go spring, summer, and fall. So. We really enjoy it.
Music?
Music for my wife's the 80s.
Okay.
And I like the classic rock. So
nice.
we kind of have a mix on the way, and Most of the time I fall asleep, so she wins the rating.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, guys, thank you so much for taking the time and sitting down with us here. I know you're probably busy here at the fair, showing people what you guys do, but glad that we're able to shed a little light on what you guys do as well. So Mark, Jeff, thank you so much again for coming here, but also for what you do for DOT and for the citizens here in New York.
Oh, thank you
And
both.
as a parent whose son is going to school in a couple weeks,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you
for
both. We
keeping our
appreciate
families safe.
appreciate you guys too. Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely our pleasure. Well, Anya, another one in the books. Good one here today from the fair.
Oh, I love it. And you know what's interesting to me is this is something that's tangible for people like us. We've got kids, when we're always on the road too. So it's nice to know that we've got dedicated people who are really looking out for us. So
No
thank
doubt
you.
about it. No doubt about it. Well, thank you all for tuning into this episode of the DOT POD. We'll be back as always. We got another episode coming from the New York State Fair, so you want to stick around for that. But thank you for tuning in wherever you tune in. You can reach out to us, podcast at dot.ny.gov. That's podcast at dot.ny.gov. So until then, we'll be right here on the DOT POD.